Alright, so for the past 10 days I have been playing through this Radiance mod, and I have enjoyed it. I think it's really good so far. Now, I would like to go ahead and point out that this mod is very new. Like, not even a month old new. So, there might be some changes, stuff might change over time, anything that you hear today that you might not particularly like might get changed, or it might get fixed in some way. So, just keep that in mind when you're considering this mod. I know some of it might scale a little bit odd right now, but I'm sure that it's probably getting looked at and tweaked over time based off player interaction, stuff like that, any feedback that they receive. This mod developer is hanging out in Shadow Evil's Discord most commonly, especially in the support Discord, so if you are in there and you play through the mod and you have any questions or ideas, I'm sure that they wouldn't mind listening to them, at least a little bit. So if you have any genuine constructive feedback, let them know, and I'm sure that they'll probably address it. But I want to go ahead and start off by saying that this is possibly one of the best mods that we have for new players, because it increases the scaling, and it makes the scaling feel way easier to achieve, because normal mode scales from level 1 to level 40, and I barely had to stop to get XP, whereas I would normally have to stop multiple times. I would stop at Boom Boom, I would stop at Bad Maw, Mutated Varkids, probably Clan Wars, stuff like that basically. But by the time I got to like TVHM, where I would also do all of those farms, I kind of realized that I could skip a lot of it. So I didn't need to do them, but I could go do them if I wanted to, and I wouldn't get punished for not doing them. So it's more new player friendly in that way. It doesn't make you go out of your way to farm XP or really have to farm at all, which is really nice. I will also say that it leaves a lot of the vanilla items alone. Instead, it incorporates its own custom items, which, very big warning, if you're going to run this mod, make sure it's launched before you start your game, or before you press continue, because you will brick a couple of your items, but that is just a problem with every mod at this point, is the fact that custom items do brick if you do launch the game without executing the mod. So just keep that in mind, make sure you do that whenever you play. So, normal mode scales level 1 through 40, DVHM scales level 40 through 80, and then that leaves UVHM, where the player can entirely prepare as much as they want. They will enter the difficulty with the max amount of skill points, they can enter the difficulty with everything but essentially pearlescence. You can even get Gen 2 comms in TVHM. They would have to be a world drop to be able to get them, which they are no longer restricted by level, and they are allowed to world drop now, so that's a really nice change. I do like that. It means that you might be able to get one of those class mods earlier into the mod. You can run it earlier, you can test stuff out with different builds earlier, stuff like that. So I really do like that change, and I think it's good. And then, I know not needing to level in UVHM can feel a little bit weird, especially if you're a player who's used to doing so. But trust me, it's a lot better than having to do the level 50 to 80 grind. So I think personally that it's just a better choice. Now, for how this mod goes ahead and handles OP levels, it's different than pretty much any other mod I've ever seen handle it. Essentially, you can be at OP 10, for example here. We are our undiscovered quest are level 90. That's how you can tell if people are on high OP levels, by the way. If you're in open multiplayer and want to see what OP they're on, just open the mission tab, look for undiscovered missions, see what level those are. And you can see it's level 90, but if I go ahead and open this vendor and look at some of the loot, it's level 80. That's because the scaling of OP levels has been reduced slightly to make this a tolerable and sufferable experience. It also means, once again, this is less farming for the player, so if you are a newer player, it is more friendly to you, because you can do level 80 all the way up through OP 10 on DigiPeak, only farming once. And as long as you have prepared the equipment you think you will need, you can probably do it. And the only thing stopping you at that point is your own personal skill, and your ability to mess with the new player skill trees and stuff, which the new skill trees are different. They're a lot different. This mod changes everybody, and I do like how a lot of these characters are changed. They sound really strong on paper, they can be really strong on paper, it just kind of depends. So, for example, with Gage here, she has a couple of shock skills. They're very nice. If you build into them, they can be really strong. Of course, she has Make It Sparkle and Sharing is Caring, which are vanilla tools. But in her skill tree, Anarchy is different. So Anarchy in this mod is triggered on reloading with a 25% chance, and all it does is make the next magazine of the gun do 100% more. So that's all it does, and the main way that you will stack damage whenever you're mobbing is actually with Deathtrap out, because Deathtrap has built-in Upshot Robot, which basically means if you get a kill, it increases Deathtrap's timer, it increases the amount of gun, shock, and melee damage that both of you deal by 2% per stack, and it does seem to exponentially stack like Anarchy. So, as long as you and Deathtrap are out and rolling, you will just start stacking insane amounts of damage. And I will say, right now, Deathtrap might need a little bit of a tune, because he can get really OP really fast for seemingly no reason, and I'm not really sure what it is. His shock laser is dealing way too much damage. I'm sure that that will be addressed, because he can just shred or evaporate many a raid boss at OP10 with even as low as like 50 to 100 stacks of Upshot Robot, and that sounds like a lot, but there is also currently a weird interaction where you get 2 stacks per kill, which means that you're basically getting 4% stat increase, not quite, it's like 2% and then an exponential 2% on top of that every single time you get a kill. So over time you just start getting insane amounts of damage really fast, and Deathtrap just starts to tear off for some reason. He just starts dealing insane damage even compared to the player in a lot of situations, which is really interesting. But it's just how it is right now. Now, outside of Deathtrap, the player does have plenty of damage. I don't want to make it sound like you don't have options. The B shield is slightly nerfed in this mod, which it does deserve, but it's not an insane amount. It's only like 30% less damage, which is plenty. I'm sure that most people can agree that it is plenty of damage usually. And also the general scaling of the difficulty is reduced, so, well, the general stats are reduced. So if you look at my health and shield here, you'll see that the B shield is at 78,000, max health is at 152,000, we're in level 80. And then if I, you know, like look around here, yeah, my guns, like they're reduced, everything is reduced, the scaling is lower, so it's a lot more gentle. A lot of these stats are more akin to, say, level 70 than they are to level 80 or even level 90 content. So it is a little more tolerable for especially new players and also returning players. So that is just a thing. A lot of the scaling is lower, so it's nice for that. And then, yeah, the character has plenty of damage of her own, 36% here, 36% without a class mod, 30% shock damage, 30% shock damage here, 25 now, they just changed it, 25% here, and then another 35% here without class mod. So there's plenty of damage on the character, 34% more fire rate, and just a lot of stuff like that. There's plenty of damage to go around. You are fine for damage. Deathtrap is of course insane, but the player can also deal good damage. Another very big change, which I think is important to note, is that Moxie weapons such as the Grog, Ruby, Kitten, Hail, take your pick, all of these no longer provide lifesteal, and now instead just provide a flat percentage health regen a second. This would feel odd normally by late game, in most mods especially, but it does enforce the desire to actually build into the character's survivability properly. So, for example, you're not really going to be able to panic heal out of a lot of situations, but you can go ahead and become pretty tanky anyway regardless, because you can build into your character. So Gage, for example, is really good at stacking shields, what a surprise. So I get my DR here, you get a bunch of shield regen here, you can get even more over here. And then you can pretty well remain pretty tanky for the most part. We're kind of at OP 10 here. I'm trying to let a guy kind of shoot at me here. And as you can see, he's not really getting through my shield. Deathtrap's really helping with that too, by the way. But they don't really get to go through your shield as fast as you can recover your shield for Blaster. But yeah, you can be plenty tanky as long as you build your character properly, even a little bit. So that feels fine. This is high level content. The fact that I'm not dying in 2 shots or like 3 melees is very impressive. And of course, I don't have great health maintenance since I am playing Gage. So as soon as that shield drops, I do want to go ahead and backpedal a lot. Maybe if I would just actually shoot the guys, I would be okay. Stuff like that. So yeah, the lifesteal not existing isn't really a problem. Instead, it just inspires the player to actually build into their survivability. So Gage has a lot of shield, some of the characters probably have a lot of good health maintenance. I tested a Salvador for a little bit. He felt fairly meaty when it came to his health shield, like his health. So everything feels fine there. The lack of lifesteal does not feel bad. You just have to actually build into your survivability skills on your character, and they're actually useful in this mod, which they're normally not in vanilla, so that is nice. And I think that pretty much covers it. This is a very new player friendly overhaul. It is very nice. It does level scaling the best I've ever seen a mod do level scaling. I do genuinely enjoy the ability to level quickly, especially considering the fact that I do play through the game basically every other week at this point. So being able to level up really fast has felt really nice. Everything feels fine, the scaling is good, the ability to utilize your character's skills to actually live yourself instead of relying on lifesteal is really nice at OP 10. You're not constantly fighting health gate 24/7, so that's really good. There are a couple enemies here and there by OP 10 that can be a little bit too thick, but I think those are getting attended to as well. BA enemies and loot midgets especially seem to have entirely too much health compared to the average cast, and sometimes even opposed to raid bosses. Of course, raid bosses have way more health, but those are big boys, whereas a loot midget is like a little guy, and he should not have a lot of health because he's a tiny little guy. And like, yeah, he should have some health because he has a lot of loot, but it's too much health. You'll probably see it if you play the mod. So yeah, this is a really nice overhaul. It has a nice custom characters. I like the building and stuff. Everything feels good about it. The items feel nice. The fact that you can still use a lot of your vanilla arsenal if you're not quite comfortable with the modded equipment feels good. There is, of course, really good modded equipment. So there's plenty to test. There's plenty to use, plenty to try. I would definitely recommend it. Radiance.